Good day, my Janeites. I am the Austen reviewer. So today we're going to ask the very simple question for our impertinent curiosity of what kind of corsets did they wear during the Regency? And the correct answer is none! Next question, please. I guess that's not exactly satisfactory, is it? You have to elaborate. Now, they did wear what we would consider something like a corset in foundation garments. They wore stays. Stays and corsets, though generally lumped together, are not actually the same thing. Corsets, as we think of them today, didn't actually come into being until the Victorian era. Before that, they would have all been considered stays. In previous eras, corsets, as we call them and kind of classify them today, were originally known as a pair of bodies, and they were a structured garment that had various construction things, but generally was either flush in the front or flush in the back, with one tie on either. Stays were adjustable, generally on both sides, though some of them were a little bit more that way, but they generally were a lot more about shaping the body into something a little different from how it would naturally look, whereas the stays, aside from lifting the bosom a lot, were generally more in line with the natural female figure. So what is the difference? Well, the difference is, in something of stays, it's lacing. It's in the lacing in the front, lacing in the back. It's a little hard to do it by yourself, but that's how it went. With a corset, there was a front busk. And the busk was involved with either some pins or buttons or hook and eye sort of structures, something along those lines that would actually secure it in the front. In stays, there was something called a busk, but it wasn't actually a feature that was built into the corset. It was a piece of wood, generally, or some other such thing, that there was a pocket built into the stays that you would actually put it between your breasts so that it would lay more flat against your sternum and keep your front upright. They weren't particularly comfortable to wear. Ask anyone that wears them now, but they would have been used to them. Now, this is not this is a corset. This is not an antique style of corset. This is a modern style, but the basic theory is still the same. And there is some commonalities between stays and corsets. They both would have used boning. This is using spiral steel. It's fairly movable, as you can see here, though there is straight steel in the busk and in the rear busk. The baleen from whales, which is the tooth-like structures in baleen whales that actually filters things like krill and stuff out of the water for them. So those are actually quite flexible. The baleen, or the boning, was not what actually kept you in. That provided some structure for the fabric, but it was actually the fabric, which is, in modern corsets or older ones, a fairly sturdy kind of a fabric, usually a cotton. So it would be somewhat breathable, or a linen in other cases, but that's generally not as often because it's a little bit flimsier, that would actually create the shape of the person. Those would have been custom made, and they were to give a certain kind of a shape, but they weren't necessarily that you'd actually crush yourself in these things to get to that shape without having worn one before. That's not how they actually did it, because you'd kill yourself doing something like that. Do you need something? So in the Regency, they didn't have corsets proper, they had stays. They had lacing in the front, lacing in the back. They did, however, have two main categories of stays. There was long stays, which you would wear under a ball gown, or if you were going out walking or to a dinner or something like that. They would have been from about here all the way down to your hips. Some of them even would have gone over your hips a little bit. And those were just to give you a firm silhouette and to shape your bosom into what it was supposed to be. There was also something else called short stays. Short stays were much more similar to our modern bras. They still gave you the same silhouette, but they only came down so far. So I'm actually wearing one, so if I stand up here, I'm just holding my microphone. The stays that I'm wearing only actually come to about here, which is about even with, not quite the bottom of my rib cage, but about halfway down it from. So they start in a similar place to where a modern bra would start, but they were designed to lift the bosom much higher, because that was what was in fashion at the time, though the amount of height that you needed did vary a little bit. Of these, they had two primary styles of how they would actually do the lifting. There are ones like the ones that I have, where they have kind of built-in cups that just kind of carry stuff up here and there's nowhere else for your bosom to go. But there was also ones where they had a crisscross, so one would tie over here and the other one would cross over. and those would keep you held in. The ones I have actually have the ties in the middle, and the back would be more of a structured thing, so you could put them on by yourself. So that's one of the elements of undergarments, and since we're on the subject, I may as well mention the others because there's not very many. You would have worn stockings. Depending on how fashion forward you were, you might have worn drawers, but most people probably didn't. Those, again, didn't become very popular until the Victorian era. You would have had your stays on. Over that, you would have put on your shift, and over that went your gown. And that's about it. They didn't really use crinolines in the same way as what they would in previous or future eras from that. So it was a much more natural silhouette that way. But yeah, the fabric you would have had those things made out of would have changed or varied a little bit based on the time of the year, but in general they would have been made of linen, and they would have been washed quite frequently if you could afford it. And yeah, so that's what you would have worn under your dresses as a woman. I hope you enjoyed that video, found it educational. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll see if I can get to them. Have a great day. I remain as ever, until the next time we meet, the Austen Reviewer. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more content, share with your friends to help my channel gain a bit more exposure. I would appreciate it if you would have a look at my Patreon. It's not required by any means, but it does help to support me and just allow me to make more of these videos and put them out on a more regular basis. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.